Oh, what's up, GameLeapers? It's the Jizz, and in today's video, 3 most broken champions for each role for 13.6. And well done, by the way, for clicking on another Macca's video. This one is going to help you improve Kappa, but you're still going to be the same elo, yeah? After watching this 10-minute video. But if you actually do want to climb divisions and tiers, GameLeap.com, the website in the description comment section. Like, I can teach you everything there is, bro. Back timing, wave management, positioning, even little things like itemization, rune optimizations, right? Even your spacing, how you're using abilities, like everything in the game that really matters. Like, I can help you improve, and it doesn't matter what champion you pick in your role. You can pick team mode support for all I care. You will 1v9 based on the teachings in our website video. So check out the website, link down below. And yeah, let's get into the 3 most broken champions for each role for next patch. Now, starting in the top lane, number 3, we have Malphite. Now, because the W buff really recently to Malphite, they've actually made him like a really busted champion. Honestly, like in pretty much every single elo, this guy performs well, even though he does have some like pretty hard counters, like in higher elos, right? If you blind pick Malphite, you will be running into like a lot of AP champions because you're picking Malphite really just to like cuck the attack damage champions and attack speed based champions in the top lane. So it might be something like a Jax, it might be something like a Tryndamere, for example, because you can build Frozen Heart as part of your items. But even without this, because of your E, the attack speed reduction is just so powerful. And because of the recent buffs, yes, to your W, pair this with a Frostfire Gauntlet, you one-shot people with auto attacks now. Like, it's a little bit cooked to play against. But yeah, Malphite is number 3. Just be a little bit careful about blind picking it because yeah, you will run into some good AP champions in the top lane. Now, number 2, speaking of one of those champions who Malphite really cucks, this is Jack. Now, there are no nerfs to the hockey stick in 13.6, so he's got to be on this countdown as well. This champion is still overperforming despite his early game getting hit in recent patches. You know, I mean, the fact you have 140% AP ratio in your E, and as long as you get a max E off, this will deal insane damage, particularly if you go something like Zhonya's Hourglass as your 3rd or 5th item. But yeah, not much has really changed for this champion. Lethal tempo getting nerfed, I guess, like might be some sort of hit in the early game. But honestly, it probably doesn't matter too much. You can still run Ghastly Undying on this champion. So yeah, Jax is number 2. Still an unreal pick in the top lane. You probably do have to think about banning Jace or Gragas though if you want a nice free lane. Now, speaking of a free lane, I don't actually know if this champion is going to have any counters in the top lane, but Vayne in 13.6, if the changes do go through, like the buffs are like some of the biggest buffs I've ever seen. If they do go through, this champion is just going to be the outright number 1 top lane, and maybe even champion on the Rift, because the buffs are huge, right? Your passive movement speed is going up 50%, your Q's damage is going up, your W's damage is going up at earlier ranks, and this means that you don't actually have to max this first. You can max something like your Q first, and yeah, it's just Vayne top lane. Like, she's an amazing counter into so many things, and some people as well might think you're going like, you know, AD carry Vayne. Next minute, you send it to the top lane and dominate whichever melee champion, even ranged champion. So Vayne is number 1, guys, in the top lane for 13.6. Now, moving into the jungle, these 2 champions are largely unchanged. Well, they kind of are unchanged, because for J4 and Lee Sin, if you're running Conqueror, right, and you're going like Eclipse or Gore Drinker maybe into some games, right, these 2 champions are just like cream of the crop as far as attack damage junglers go. They are easily the best right now, and that's what we're seeing a lot in pro play as well at the moment. So if you look at like the LCK, which is playing on 13.5 or 13.6, remember, nothing is changing for these 2 champions, so they're still going to be insanely strong. Just be a little bit careful about maybe blind picking J4, because lots of champions do cuck you. So stuff like Thresh support, because he can flay you out of your EQ. Even something like Azire is really good against J4. So there are other like champions you have to worry about, right, when you're picking J4. Like top lane, you have to think about mid lane and all that stuff. You can't just lock him in, but at least you can. Like, you're such a versatile champion, and I think he's just a little bit better than J4 for that reason. But those are number 3 and number 2 for the jungle, and the number 1 jungler is an AP champion who's going to benefit from the Nash's Tooth buff coming in 13.6. Well, it's not really a buff, it's actually more of just like an adjustment. So the actual cost for Nash's is going up 3,200 gold. That's 200 gold extra than what it is right now. But you're getting 15 ability haste. For a champion like Echo, who really appreciates ability haste, this is a great buff for him. And because he's so good anyway at the moment, I think this is just going to push him into really OP territory. So here's the number 1 jungler for 13.6. Obviously, try to think of what your team comp is going to look like. If you have a lot of magic damage already, probably don't lock this guy in. But if you compare this with like a Renekton top, some sort of attack damage mid laner, like an Aurelia, for instance, Echo, you will pop off and have a field day. Now, moving to the mid lane. Speaking of the mid lane, number 3, we have Talon, who is getting buffed in 13.6. And I know that Talon isn't the most amazing mid laner at the moment, but he will be in 13.6 because his base mana is increasing and his W's mana cost is also decreasing. This means that as far as your wave clear and actually, you know, CSing and poking the enemy champion, you can just do more of everything in the early laning phase, which is when you are actually vulnerable. But what's also changing for Talon is your passive's damage is getting buffed. So a little bit in the early game, but a lot in the late game, and your ultimate's damage is increasing from rank 2, so level 11 onwards, including level 16, of course, right? So these 2 damage buffs I think are going to be really good, because when you do hit the mid to late game, lane, you can one-shot a lot of people. This means, I think, especially the passive buff, right, for good Talon players who can proc this pretty much all the time, it's going to be massive. And I think Talon in the mid lane is going to be really good. You probably just have to be a little bit careful about picking Talon into maybe, well, just blind picking him, I guess, because you might have to be careful about playing into something like maybe a LeBlanc, something like this, right? Might be an annoying lane for you. Even Aurelia might be another one, right? So do be a little bit careful with that, but the Talon buffs, I think they're going to make him really good. That's why he's number 3. Now, number 2, a champion who is surprisingly just like unchanged for next patch, and I am surprised by this because Annie, as a support anyway, is really good, right? But in the mid lane, she's still very strong indeed. The actual E that gives you movement speed, and if your jungler's ganking, you can use it on Tibbers, of course. You can even use it on yourself to gap close to the enemy mid laner. Now, she does get cucked by ranged champions, okay? And I don't just mean like, you know, any ranged champion. I'm really talking about long-range champions. So these might include Vel'Koz, a bit of Xerath, right? A bit of Syndra, Orianna maybe, because it's difficult as Annie to run into them. Annie is all about close range, okay? So if you do see a lot of range on the enemy team, Veigar is another one, by the way. Be very careful about picking Annie into a Veigar team. They will destroy you, and you will feel like you can't do anything. You can't even touch the enemy champions. Now, of course, in solo queue, right, and in most elos, people won't be playing at that range. They'll get their spacing all wrong. If you do want to maximize your spacing and actually space perfectly, sign up to the GameLeap website for all those videos that we're doing. But yeah, Annie is number 2. She's still a very good champion, and you can pick her anyway. It shouldn't matter too much, but yeah, just thought I'd give you guys those tips. Now, number 1 mid laner. We've already mentioned her. So if you have Echo jungle, think about picking Aurelia in the mid lane. This champion, because, well, there are like no real nerfs to her in 13.6, is just going to be Giga OP. Especially if you can pick Aurelia into some sort of like magic damage mid and jungle kind of duo. So let's just say you're playing against an Echo and any mage mid laner, right, with AP. You can get Merc Treads, you can get Wit's End, you can get Shield Bow. You will be unkillable, bro. Like, it doesn't matter even how bad you are at Aurelia. Like, I'm sure we've all experienced it, right? Aurelia, like, they'll miss their ultimate, their E. All they do is just Q to you and auto attack you and you die anyway. So I think the champion, yes, she has a massive high skill ceiling, right? Like if you watch someone like a Rel King, you will see the full potential of this champion, but even just for like kind of novice, you know, beginner Aurelia players, I really think this champion is just exploitable and abusable for free LP at the moment. So she is the number 1 mid laner, and if you do actually want to learn the champion, of course, once again, sign up to the website to do just that. Now moving down to the bot lane here, guys, the number 3 AD carry. Well, there are lots of changes to the AD carry role in 13.6. The fact lethal tempo is getting nerfed in the early game, it's important for lethal tempo AD carries. Also, Navori Quick Blades is getting nerfed, so this will affect champions like Xayah, for instance, Zeri, Kai'Sa as well, right? Other Navori Quickblade AD carries. But for Xayah, despite the tempo nerfs, despite the Quickblade nerfs, I don't think they're going to be enough to stop this champion from being a top tier AD carry. Because of the bot lane at the moment, and even the game in a way is very close range. If you think like a Malphite, right, we had him in the top lane. If you think about jungle, we had Lee Sin and J4. In the mid lane, we have Talon, Annie, Aurelia. As Xayah, all you have to do is press your ult, and you completely cuck and destroy all of these champions, right? In the bot lane as well, we're seeing a lot of Nautilus, we're seeing Thresh quite a bit. Xayah does very well into these champions again because you just press R. I mean, Thresh is a little bit more risky, but yeah, you do so well in the meta right now, so Xayah is number 3. Now, speaking of meta, a champion who is getting nerfed because he's so good, but he will still be so good in 13.6 is Veigar. Now, your base HP is going down, your base armor is going down, and yes, this is AP carry Veigar in the bot lane, but the thing here is like, do you think you really need armor or even like HP at the moment, given the fact you can just farm from a super far way back and not get hit by anything? Like, the buffs to his Q and W's range a few patches ago mean that Veigar is just kind of chilling until like what, you get Roa, or maybe you get like some sort of Everfrost build depending on the enemy composition, right? You just get to scale for free now. That's what I think anyway, like in pretty much every single game, and he's so effective against so many champions. Like, he's such a big cuck. So if you see an enemy bot lane, right, where they have a lot of close range, you can just pick this champion. Even if the enemy team has a lot of close range and you don't know who you're against in the bot lane, you can still pick this guy and just pop off. So Baby Gandalf is number 2 for the bot lane. Now, the number 1 AD carry, guys, for 13.6 is going to continue to be Jinx. Lethal tempo is getting nerfed, but big deal. It's going to hit everyone, and honestly, it's not like the biggest thing in the world. And it's Jinx getting to the late game is so easy now because of the recent buffs to her, especially the attack speed buff, right? That has been huge, and I think you can just blind pick her. She does very well into Xayah, for example, because you just outrange and outpush her with your fish bones. But yeah, I'll just say this, guys, about playing Jinx. Please try to be in lane to get priority. You do not want to be playing Jinx like just sitting under your tower getting fisted. You want to be playing with priority. She is actually like a good aggressive AD carry if you can play like that. So do keep that in mind, but Jinx is the number 1 AD carry for next patch. Now, alongside AD carries, we have the supports. Now, third support, number 3. This is Annie. We've already mentioned Annie in the mid lane, and kind of the same reason, I guess, for the bot lane as well, right, as playing support Annie, is that you do so well into so many close range champions. Your E now, the fact, yeah, you can like movement speed buff one of your teammates, your AD carry, your jungle who's going to gank, even yourself to stun the enemy champions, and yeah, because of the upgraded Tibbers as well, who's unkillable, it's great for tower revives, your flash ult as well with your stun is very scary, right? So Annie in the bot lane, great pick. Very good into the meta as well, like lots of these champions. Now, the second best support is Blitzcrank. This champion, like, I don't know why he isn't even picked more. Like, his kit is just set up perfectly to cuck so many supports. If you see a Thresh, right? If you see an Enchantress, if you see maybe even an Annie who you might be able to blow up before she even does anything once you hit level 6, right? Might be a little bit risky picking Blitzcrank into Annie, but hopefully you guys catch my drift here. This champion has such a good win rate in every single elo. He's like an S+ tier support. So consider putting Blitzcrank, guys, in your pool for 13.6. And the number one support. Now, I know I started a petition yesterday, right? And copped a bit of flack, okay? Because there are some people out there who enjoy playing Yuumi. But if you're playing against Yuumi, you're going to want to commit. It's not a fun experience. It's not enjoyable. It's not, you know, what we play League for, to play against a champion you can't hit. Of course you can pick something like Blitzcrank into her, right? Or Nautilus, and you hook the AD carry, who she's sitting on top of. But even though she's getting nerfed in 13.6, I still think this champion is just beyond busted because of the recent changes. And you guys can let me know in the comment section if you do actually think she's OP since the changes. And yeah, leave your thoughts on any of the champions we mentioned, guys. Maybe there's a champion who you think is actually more broken than any of these. Let us know who that champion is in the comment section. But thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like down below if you did enjoy it. And until our next season 13 upload, this has been EZCHALLENGER. Peace.